everyone, it's Keeley here for Soy and Shea, and thank you so much for joining me for today's soap making video where we're going to go and do a remake of oatmeal milk and honey. And I'm taking you along with me as I make this soap today because I have a new honeycomb silicone sheet for making the honeycomb imprint on the top, and I wanted to show that to you. Also going to show you how I make a full milk replacement soap without having to freeze my lye water first. Let's go and see how I make my oatmeal milk and honey soap. Let's go. All right, so I think I've got everything ready to go here. I am having one of those days where everything I do is just going horribly wrong. If I can drop it, I've dropped it. If I could spill it, I spilt it. It's just one of those days where I really should not be making soap, but I have to make soap. So let's get on with it. First thing I'm going to add in here is some colloidal oatmeal. I like to use the colloidal oatmeal in this one as opposed to grinding up oats. It just gives it a much smoother finish, and I have a lot of people who have sensitive skin that buy this one. So we've got our colloidal oatmeal in, and the next thing I'm going to add in is some milk powder. And to make this into a 100% milk liquid without putting my lye into it, I like to use the powder, and I work out how much liquid I have in my lye solution. I think there's a total, it's just over 500 and something water. I master batch all mine. There's just over 500 mil. You need 35 grams of powder per 125 mil of water to make up full milk. So then I just work out how much milk powder I actually need to add into my soap here. It looks like a lot, but this will give me 100% milk in my soap without having to go through the whole thing of freezing milk to add my lye into without scorching it. And that's just simply because I don't have a freezer to be able to freeze my milk. So this is how I prefer to do mine. What I'm going to do now is just give this a really good mix to make sure that all of that powder is incorporated and hasn't gone lumpy through the oils. And you want to do that before you add the lye in, because if you are struggling to get the lumps out once that lye water is in there, the more you mix it, the more you're going to start tracing it and it's going to get too thick to handle. Next thing I'm going to add in here is my honey. I used to add it in at a later stage, but then I got lazy and just started adding it in right now, and I found that it really doesn't make too much difference with how I now work with my soap. But if you are a beginner soap maker, I do recommend adding your honey in after you've added your lye water and brought it to trace. Gonna add in just that little bit more. There we go. No, just two more grams. I'm adding it in so it's about 3% of my oil weight. Again, I'm going to give that a mix. We'll get the scales out of the way because I don't need them anymore. Now, it's not going to fully combine in there because honey is not oil soluble, it's water soluble, but by having it suspended through the oils, it does make it a bit easier to mix through now. So we've just poured in our lye water, and I've been able to make my lye water at full strength. I didn't need to do any discounting because I'm using that milk powder. I'm going to give this a mix and bring it up to emulsion. That is looking good. I always find this recipe quite funny because I expect it to move quite quickly on me because of all the sugars that get added in, but it always seems to move a little bit slower, bringing it up to that emulsion. All right, let's split it out for some colors. I've got some Extravagance Gold, we've got some titanium dioxide dispersed in water, and then I have some Bronze Sparks as well. So we're kind of really picking up on the honey theme that is in here. The white is more about the milk. That is looking good. Now I know that with this particular soap, it does go into a golden color, so I'm just going to work with it. And into my main batch here, I'm going to put in some grandeur mica, which will give it that really nice golden look. Let's get all these colors mixed in. We'll start with that white first. only just starting to come up to light trace in the big bucket, which is good. So we've still got plenty of working time here. Let's get the stick blender out of the way, because in the past the fragrance oil has always behaved fairly well, but I have had a new batch of this in, and sometimes things change between batches of oil. So when it used to behave, then all of a sudden it doesn't. So for example, clean cotton, I used to be able to soap with that all the time, and now it's just an absolute nightmare to soap with. Anyhow, we've got oatmeal milk and honey as the fragrance. I'm going to add it into the darker colors only. It doesn't discolor that I know of, but I've never really added it to the white because I want it to stay as white as possible. And oh, that smells really good. Just got a big burst of that. So I'm going to get my fragrance mix through, and then we're going to go and grab a mold. Now, although I haven't added fragrance to the white, it still needs a little bit of a stir because I only give it a quick blitz. So you do still actually have some uncolored soap sitting in there. So that's done. Let's give our darker one a mix as well. All right, let's grab our mold. And I always make this soap as a curly one. So we start by pouring in half a mold of this one. And then we're going to pour in our other colours. Oh, it's behaving so beautifully. We'll leave just enough to go on to the top afterwards. Let's go for our titanium dioxide. Right now I'm going to be relying on the movement of the soap to make those swirls. I am hoping this isn't too thin that it's going to muddy, but we won't find that out till tomorrow. Let's pour the rest of that in. I'm actually going to go quite slow with that pouring because it is so thin. If you can control the pouring of your soap, you have sort of better control over the swirls. If your soap's quite thick, you need to pour harder and faster to get that movement going through. But if your soap's quite runny, like this one is, I find it best to pour a little bit slower so that the soap doesn't move as fast and then it doesn't get all muddy in the process of pouring. So let's get that all scraped out. I'm going to get the other colours on the top here too. I'm just scraping my bucket out, having a bit of a chuckle to myself. The other night I was basically doom scrolling on social media while I was waiting for the ads to finish on the telly, and this Aussie soap maker came up. I don't know who she was. I wasn't paying too much attention, but she was getting a little bit upset about how people don't scrape their soap containers. I thought, well, she's obviously never seen me, because you can practically eat your dinner out of my soap buckets after I've finished with them. Not that I would recommend anyone do that, but she's obviously never seen me scrape my containers. And to be honest, I don't think I've ever seen any soap maker not scrape their pots, unless it's because sometimes I think, well, you don't really need to see me scraping all this soap out the containers, so I actually skip and it looks like I haven't scraped them. But I can tell you, I scrape every last bit of soap out of my containers because it just makes it so much easier to clean them if you don't have as much soap left in them. Now that I've kind of got it to that, let's get all that bit out too. What I will do is just take my damp cloth and I wipe them out like that. And then that means when it's time to make the next soap, if I'm having a soaping marathon, I can actually just reuse this jug, and I don't have nearly as much washing up as I used to, because I'm now basically cleaning my cups or my jugs as I go along. All right, let's get this one all scraped out, and then I'll show you the new things that I have bought to make my oatmeal honey soap, or any of my honey soaps with, really. Let's get that all scraped out. Titanium dioxide is usually the hardest pot to scrape out because it does get a little bit thicker than the others, but that is looking nice and scraped out. I am going to give it just a little bit of a swirly swirl. no rhyme or reason because some of this is going to be covered up. Let's just go like that. Still adds a bit of nice interest. Don't think I quite discounted my oils enough because this soap is very, very full. That's right, it will just be a very generous bar. All right, so I have what are now these cut up blue strips. I will try and leave it on the screen exactly what these are. I'm just trying to remember how I cut them. That's it. All right, so just use these two. I was getting so fed up of using and wasting bubble wrap, and so the last lot of bubble wrap I actually used stuck to my soap, and I spent ages trying to pull this bubble wrap back off the soap, and I decided I needed to find something better to actually make my honeycomb look on the top. And I've seen people use silicone mats and I couldn't find any to use, and then I actually discovered that you could use this silicone mat that people use for making rolled beeswax. I'll try and leave a link down below to where you can buy them from, but I was able to find this little silicone mat that has these beeswax sort of, the hexagon sort of grooves on them. They're a little bit smaller than beeswax. It should give a really, really nice pattern across the top of here with a little bit of luck. This is the first time I am using them. But they did come in like this big sheet, and then I've just cut them up into the strips to fit my molds here. So hopefully these are going to work, and then all I'll have to do is peel them off, wash them off, and then I can reuse them. So I'll stop wasting. I actually don't buy a lot of bubble wrap. Most of the bubble wrap I use is stuff other people have sent me. So I don't use a lot of it, and there has been occasions I've looked for bubble wrap and I just don't have any. So hopefully now I won't have that problem. We'll just be able to keep reusing these. I am now just going to sprinkle down a few actual rolled oats on here, being careful not to put too much because I don't want to put too many drag lines through the soap when we go to cut it. Plus I like, if you haven't already guessed by how I decorate my soaps, I do actually like to keep the decorations on soaps purposeful. Like the oats don't actually really do much for you. It's why I don't really stick a lot of botanicals and stuff on my soaps, because I want whatever I put on my soap to be practical, to actually clean you. But this soap does generally demand that we put some oat on it. But there it is so far. Gonna leave this one set overnight, and then tomorrow we'll come and take those strips off and see what that looks like and see what swirls we've got on the inside. This is very full. It's the next day, we're ready to cut into our oatmeal milk and honey, and I am super keen to see what it looks like underneath this silicone thing. I'm trying to get it out without getting too much soap under my nails there. I don't think it's gonna happen. Oh my goodness. I am absolutely in love with the look that this gives. That is so much nicer than bubble wrap. Oh, that is absolutely stunning. Look at that fine detail, and I really, really like the small hexagon pattern this is given. That is looking absolutely stunning. They've come off these so cleanly, so I'll just give them a bit of a wipe down, pop them back in my box ready for reuse. But what I'm now going to do is go and get this onto Ida, and we're going to cut this one into bars. All right, so let's get this one onto Ida. Now I've got the oats on this side, and what I'm going to do is flip my soap onto its side so that the oats are at the bottom of my cutter here. You can generally only do this if you've got flat top soaps. If you've got really bumpy soaps, it's a little bit harder to do it. But by putting my soap on its side like this, those oats will not drag through the soap at all. Let's take a look at the inside. The end piece is a little bit boring, but I can tell you from my side, it looks stunning. And what we're gonna do, I wanna be careful not to flatten my, my little honeycomb pieces, because the soap is actually still a little bit soft, but look, there you go. We've got some beautiful swirls. And look at that little honeycomb pattern. I am super impressed with those little matte silicone things. Like I said, they are for actually creating those big sheets of beeswax that you see people roll up into beeswax candles, but they have worked so well at making that impression on the top of the soap here. It just looks so much nicer than what, well, to me, it looks so much nicer than what the bubble wrap does. And I've used bubble wrap for years to create these little indentations, but from now on, I will be using I will be using those silicone mats. My OCD says these all have to face the correct way, the way in which they are coming off their rack. It really won't matter in a couple of days once I've got it all tidied up and onto the cure rack. But for now, they have to go onto the tray the correct way. But I'm really, really happy with this. This is pretty much the standard sort of design that I always do on my oatmeal milk and honey. It was just more about showing you the little silicone strips that I've used to create the tops of these. I do hope you've enjoyed coming along with me as I made the oatmeal milk and honey soap. If you did, why not leave me a thumbs up and any comments down below. And until the next video comes out, I hope you have a good one and I will see you then. Oh, bye. It's not a good day for me.